We're the Unproducers. This is Jim Beam. Today we're talking Chrono Trigger.
Come on, let's go through the street, looking for a traveling lift. I don't get fucked over mine, be ready to start, yeah. It's fucking Whisky time!
Time to pull one out.
I can't see anything, so I don't know if you're pouring it or not.
That's alright.
I still can't believe when I bought this, they said you could use it in a nightclub. Oh no. No, I really can't see.
Now you're blinded.
What nightclub's gonna let a dude in wearing a frog
Now that's what I
mask?
call alcohol blindness.
The real beer goggles.
Alright, Chrono Trigger, it's a video game.
Is it?
It is. And it's kind of a one-of-a-kind. Do you know why? Why I would say that?
It's good?
Yes, there are no other good video games. But also, Hironobu Sakaguchi, do you know who that fella is? Final Fantasy man.
Oh. Okay.
Yuji Horii. You know who that is?
Dragon Quest man?
Dragon Quest man. And Uematsu, who did the music for Final Fantasy up to that point. Also kind of was training the guy who is formally credited as the composer on Chrono Trigger, Mitsuda. So,
Cool.
it's like a dream team. They got the, now, of course, Square Enix is a thing. But back in the 90s, it was like the two biggest JRPG companies made a crossover. Fan fiction. And that was Chrono Trigger. But they cut out all the crossover stuff.
Well, I mean, it was like the American basketball dream team. Except instead of spanking other countries, they were, making
Spanking
one of the
my
best
monkey.
RPGs ever made.
Indeed they were. So let's talk a little bit about just like the structure of the game and the components. So one thing that makes it stand out from stuff of the time is the gameplay, of course. And there's just little things that make it different. So it wasn't quite like Dragon Quest. Although it did have, I forgot to mention, Akira Toriyama do the art, of course.
Right.
He drew your wonderful frog face, my wonderful chrono hair.
He does the same hair for everything.
He does the same everything for everything. He's actually a hack fraud. He's never made anything good in his life. I'm joking. I love Dragon Ball. But anyway. The gameplay wasn't quite like Dragon Quest. I guess it was more like Final Fantasy because it used the ATB, the bars,
Right.
that the Final Fantasy games had been using since 4. But it was really its own thing besides that because it had where your characters were at on the battlefield mattered. Where the enemies were at on the battlefield mattered. They could do combination moves and all this other shit that just made it... It's not even that it's more strategic, it's just flashier, and it's kind of more fun.
Right.
Just because for a lot of JRPGs at this point, we're getting to the point where you didn't really have to grind anymore. Because the old ones, you really had to grind a lot. And that was a huge part of the gameplay. And it was kind of getting to the point with most of them where you didn't have to do that anymore. So most of them ended up being pretty easy. So what the best part of the game was for a lot of people was just doing the flashiest, coolest shit. And I think Chrono Trigger and I think Final Fantasy VI both had that in spades, where you have like Frog and Chrono throw their arms up and a giant frog comes down and like squishes the boss and shit. Like,
Right. I mean, that's all I want to do in a video.
put your
game
arms
is
up real quick.
Coolest, stupidest shit I can figure out how to do.
Yeah. I mean, and then in Final Fantasy VI, you have, chainsaws and fucking Yetis and shit, so...
Wait, hold. Huh?
We'll get there.
Okay.
So, all of the characters, there's 7 characters, they all have their different combination attacks with each other, and You learn them as you go through the game, and it's really unintrusive, and it's simplified a little bit. Like I said, there is a bit more like strategic depth to it in some ways, and it kind of has the strategy RPG element of the placement matters, but really it's just, it allows the game to be flashier and I think more fun. And I think that's a big part of why people are attached to it. Because you could argue that it has the most fun and flashy gameplay of...
It's also not very long.
That era, yeah. It's also very... I was going to mention that too at some point, is that it's just very concise. You know, there's no time wasted. There's no... It's like, to me, if I have to sum it up, which I don't know if I was going to do at some point, I didn't do it at the beginning, but if you had to sum it up, it's kind of like the distillation of the genre. At least at that time.
Right.
Because obviously it's different now, and it was a little different before, but it's like the ultimate distillation of the concept of the genre in a lot of ways.
Right. I can agree with that.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
And I was just gonna... I don't know if you have anything to say about the music. I don't have very much to say about the music. Mitsuda, I like as a composer a lot. He went on to do Xenogears and Xenoblade and a lot of other games. I've always really liked his style. He composes songs almost like a rock group writes songs, kind of, because they're not very classical leaning. They start with a basic, like, let's call it a riff or whatever, maybe one drum pattern and a simple melody, and then it adds a layer, and then it adds a layer, then it adds a layer, something like, which we've talked about. I don't know if the episode will be before or after this, but Tool, I think, is a band you could point to that say, you know, it starts off with a groove, you add a layer, add a layer, add a layer, and that's something a lot of bands do, and I think that's something he does that kind of makes him stand out a little bit compared to a lot of the other composers, especially at the time, because they all were like classically trained, or at least that's where they took their inspiration, was from classical music, and that's how they wrote, you know. So whereas how I understand it, Mitsuda would write, he would not like compose it on paper and then take it to an orchestra or take it to the computer and then play it that way. He would kind of, on a guitar, write the melody, then put it into the system and you know, choose his instruments and shit, obviously, but go from there, sort of, instead of trying to like create a composition and then take that to the recording, not the studio, because it's all MIDI instruments, but you know what I mean. Right. So, and a lot of the songs I think are super memorable, and like I said, the soundtrack isn't too long, but I think every song on there is pretty memorable, and I think it works. Like I said, a distillation of that concept in a lot of ways. Because it's not like some grandiose 6-hour score. I think it's about 2 hours total. But the game's only, you know, what did it take us when we played it last? Like 15 hours-ish?
I think so.
Didn't do all the extra stuff from the DS version, but... So... And I'll get to that. I want to mention the DS version a little bit. And the Steam version, but...
Right.
So... Good shit.
The one thing I'll say about the music is... I mean, you say it's memorable, but... I've never gone back and been like... Oh, let me listen to music from the Dragon Tank. You know what I mean?
Oh, we'll do it.
Right.
You might be pleasantly surprised, I would find.
Oh, maybe. I guess.
It's also the kind of game that is like really... It added New Game Plus. It was one of the first games to do it. So, and I don't want to get into a huge thing about New Game Plus, but I'm of the opinion pretty much I can't think of a single game that shouldn't have New Game Plus as a feature in some way.
Well,
to me, there's no downside.
Games,
huh?
Like story-driven games.
Yeah, but like...
I don't think we need a New Game Plus of Beyond Two Souls, bro.
No, but in Beyond Two Souls, which I haven't played, the characters don't gain any... You don't gain anything as the character as you go through the story, right?
No.
So...
Sadness.
No,
that was me. Never mind.
But there's multiple endings, right?
Yeah, kinda.
Does the game track the multiple endings?
I don't remember. Maybe?
Well, if it does, then it kind of has a New Game Plus then, to an extent. But something like an RPG where, you know, in Chrono Trigger, you can just keep your levels, start a new game, you know.
Enemies are harder.
No, they're not harder.
What?
Which is nice. That's a nice thing, like Dark Souls does that. But even if they're not harder, it's still like, there's no reason not to have it as a feature. And it's a great feature to have, especially because Chrono Trigger has like 14 endings. So.
Right.
It's just, it makes, for the people that want it, and they want to replay the game with their level 60 characters and steamroll the whole thing. Like I said, they find the battle system flashy and fun, and they like to do the big moves. Then they can already do that without having to start with level 1 characters again. But if you don't want to do it, then you don't have to do it. And I appreciate it. So, like, it's most games, the vast majority. I can't think of very many exceptions where I would be like, yeah, New Game Plus would be not good as an option.
Right. It's always good to have the option.
Yeah, exactly.
There.
Exactly. And especially like when with JRPGs now, I feel like, to me, ever since Chrono Trigger did it, I don't see why games afterwards don't do it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, especially games like, Pokemon would certainly, it wouldn't suffer for having a new play.
Yeah, like having the option, take your strong ass team and just steamroll through everything. I mean,
right.
I'm sure people would find a way to use it to do weird challenge runs that would be impossible otherwise, like take an all-type team that you can't get at the beginning of the game and take it back to the beginning at a low level or something,
Right.
So it's just, I like the option that it's there, and it especially works in this game since there's so many endings anyway. Right. Which is another nice thing. Not only is the game concise, but the choices you make over the course of the game. And what I like is nowadays choices like, it's kind of a meme. You know what I mean? As in, like, they present everything as like this big moral choice that it's obviously going to be important to the story. Right. And it's not like I always hate that. I mean, shit like, I think The Witcher, for instance, like, or KOTOR, for instance, or any newer BioWare game, really. They always present the choices like, oh, you're more good, or you're more evil. Like, they're all very, like, gamey almost.
Yeah.
But in Chrono Trigger, it's a bit more simplistic because it's not, like, really called out. Like, my favorite example is the first time you play, when you run into Marl, and she drops the pendant, and then later on you go to trial, and everything you do during that part, the game keeps track of it. Like, did you talk to her first, or did you pick the pendant up first? Did you tell her she could have it back, or did you not tell her? When she asked you to play a carnival game, did you say yes, or did you say no? And that, nobody would ever think twice about any of that stuff, because it's just like, I know lots of people, like, it's fun, like, when we play Dragon Quest, it's fun just to say no.
Right.
It's fucking hilarious just to say no, because they're like, you have to do it, please! And you just keep saying no.
So, isn't it the beginning of Super Mario, Paper Mario, 1,000-Year Door? You can say no and it's game over?
Yes, I think so. I think it's Paper Mario 1,000-Year Door.
It's like the funniest shit I've ever seen. It's like, well, if you're not going to do it, game over.
Fuck you, game over.
Right.
Kill yourself.
Right.
Mario fucking hates you now. Yeah, so it's just, that's the kind of thing it tracks the things you do in the game in a fun way, so it's always fun to go through and do something a little bit differently, and all the different endings are mostly tied to New Game Plus because they all revolve around killing the final boss at different times.
Right.
So, which obviously once you're strong enough, it's easy to one-shot the boss with Chrono, but it's appreciated that...
But you gotta have my boy Frog, bro.
I don't remember that character.
Oh, really? But they call me Glenn.
I don't call him by his slave name. I call him Glenn.
Oh, no.
But, so yeah, that's a nice feature. I love the extra endings.
No, they're good. They're an option. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just what they did is they condensed the entire game so tightly and in such a smart way. The game's not super long, but they were also able to just polish everything and add all these little features that other games just couldn't do because they were so busy making a big 45-hour game that the little things on the side suffered.
Right.
But Chrono Trigger said, well, let's make a 10 or 15-hour game and let's polish everything to as close to perfect as we can possibly get.
And I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it a lot too, and it is still one of my favorite JRPGs. I like it a lot. I like it a lot.
I like a 10 to 15 hour game that has the replayability to where I can play it 3 or 4 times.
And the memorability, yeah, like...
And then, rather than playing a 145 hour game that, like...
Drags and maybe
I don't want to play it ever again, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. It's a fine line, for sure. But I do appreciate it, and that's... I think, structurally that's the strongest thing about the game, and I think probably that's the thing that makes it so beloved still today, is just the structure and the way that, like we said, it's very compact and concise and memorable and all that stuff.
All the characters are really good too.
That's
like,
what
I'm like, man, fuck this character, I can't stand him.
Which is what I wanted to get into next. So let's just kind of go over the characters and talk about them a little bit. So
Chrono never says nothing.
Start with the main party. Chrono, yeah. Just your typical kind of silent protagonist. We can do that. I mean, I find the silent protagonist discussion sort of interesting because there's lots of people who hate it. Like, for some people, it ruins the game.
Well,
for them, because I've heard people, and like, maybe we can get into it in a different video that we will record later on, or we can do it now. But, like, I've heard people, for instance, talk about this game or Dragon Quest XI and talk about how uninteresting the main character is, and it's hard for them to, like, connect to the game when they feel like the character has no character. But really, the purpose of it is for you to imprint on the character to an extent.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is the character's not really silent. He's just silent to us.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
It's not like...
they don't treat him as silent.
It's not like in Half-Life where he just never talks.
Well, and it serves a similar function in that game, too. And they make jokes about it at some points. They're like, you're quiet, aren't you?
Right.
But even in Half-Life, the purpose of it is by making Gordon Freeman a character with, like, no traits, whatever, and it worked, and especially in that game, it's like a really good example because it's a first-person game. So you never are not Gordon Freeman when you play the game, you know what I mean?
Right.
So they want to frame it as whatever is going through your head, or whatever whatever you think Gordon is thinking or feeling, then that's what it is.
Right.
And for some people, it's like, well, that makes him a lazy character. But I think it's just a different. It's interesting because it's something you can almost only do in a video game.
Right. Right.
You can't. It's hard for you to be the character in something else. You know, like if you're reading a book, even if the character is kind of almost a blank slate character with not a lot of traits, it's not like you're the character. Unless it's like a fucking choose your own adventure book or something. But even then, the words on the page are what's on the page. You know.
Correct. Yeah, and I get it.
Yeah.
But they're wrong. The silent protagonist is fine. It lets me,
well, that's what I'm saying. That's how I lean too. Is I like silent protagonists.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't exclusively like them. You know, it's not like I want every game to have them. But
besides,
shit like Dragon Quest and Chrono Trigger, it works fine because, like, they're allowing you to. They want to put you in the character's shoes, and
right.
Now, I do think that something like Dragon Quest XI, would it be a little bit better if the character was customizable? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Because
then if you could make the character like female, for instance, or whatever, and you could get into, well, they don't want to have you marry they don't want to have gay marriage in the game or whatever. I don't want to get into that at this point, but would a little bit of customizability help in that regard? Probably. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So that could be a thing, but I don't think that I have never had a problem engaging with the game because the protagonist is silent. Right. They're just like, they're supposed to be...
Well, the Persona protagonists are all silent.
Yeah.
For the most part.
I think for some people, they find that different just because they have their dialogue options that you can pick have so much character.
Right.
Where in like Dragon Quest, it's like yes, no.
Right.
But the feelings that you're feeling are what you're supposed to imprint on the character, but I don't know if people do that.
Right.
People treat it almost like a movie, kind of.
Honestly, I'd rather have my character be silent than be voiced by Yuri Lowenthal, so I'm okay with it.
Yep, I can agree to that. And that's a whole nother thing, the voice acting debate. I don't know if we've ever had that, but Also, we can save that for another game, I think.
I think so too.
Considering I've found this an excuse to ramble about New Game Plus and Silent Protagonist already. So Chrono's fine.
Yeah.
Like his design, he kind of looks like Goku. Whatever. I like
Bad
his design.
Goku.
Huh?
Bad Goku. Isn't that what every Toriyama design looks like, though?
Yeah. Bad
Not
Goku
a
or
shittier Goku?
shitty Goku or shitty Trunks, right?
Pretty much. Or shitty Gohan.
Yeah. Yeah, right, you got it. So, second character, Marl. So, here's the thing about all the characters in this game. None of them are, like, super out of left field or, like, super subversive. And they're not, like... They're all kind of, like, simplistic. I don't want to call them cliche, but they're kind of archetypes. But they're all done really well. They're all interesting and enjoyable. So, Runaway Princess. Chrono Trigger didn't invent Runaway Princess. But do I like Marl's character? She's a good character. I like the stuff that she has with her dad over the course of the game, the king. I like that when you do the first time travel and like she disappears or whatever, you know. The first time I played, or when I still play, I'm still like, oh shit, oh no. The character, you know, I like this character. She's enjoyable to be around. Oh fuck.
Right.
You know. So it works to me. She uses crossbows.
Yeah, that's neat.
She has
like that.
She has haste.
Yeah.
So in gameplay, I think she's one of the most useful characters just because of haste alone, let alone she's a good healer.
Right.
And I like her design, I like her story stuff, so she definitely works for me.
Yeah, I like that she has genie pants.
Yes, me too.
She's got that Shantae vibe going on.
Yeah,
like it.
she does. Really, Shantae is just a ripoff of Marl, let's just be honest.
Chrono Trigger's a trendsetter.
It's an influencer, bro.
It is an influencer.
Conker's
bro.
Bad Fur Day and Chrono Trigger. All games are ripoffs of those.
Basically, bro.
All art rips off Chrono Trigger and
Yeah.
Conker's Bad Fur Day, which we'll get to, trust me. So, anything else to say about Marl?
She's canon. Canon wife, bro.
She is canon life, so.
Canon wife, bro.
But she's no Ayla.
Oh.
All right. Luca.
Making this mask steamy, bro.
Luca, you got kind of the... Not like tomboy, a little bit tomboyish, but like the genius girl or like the shy, kind of intelligent girl childhood friend, too.
Yeah.
So, I like her design a lot.
Yeah.
She's got the best magic stat in the game, so she's
She's
that's the other thing that I like about having only like 7 characters, and when the gameplay is so like refined, and you don't have a ton of customization over the characters really. So every character is like the best at something pretty much.
Right.
Which is nice because you never feel like you're fucking yourself over by putting in a certain character.
Right.
Which always sucks because like
I like that.
Like in Final Fantasy VI, for instance, there's like 14 characters total.
Ooh.
And I like all of them, except the 2 optional ones. I like all of them story-wise. But in gameplay, practically, you know, there's a couple here and there that are just kind of like, I have no reason to use this character, really.
Or, Chrono Cross.
That's a fantastic example, which, if we play, we'll cover in the future, I'm sure.
Please, God, don't make me play that game.
We'll see. Gotta have a team with a scarecrow and a clown and Surge.
It's Halloween Town, boys!
Yeah. So, and Luca maybe has the most interesting side quest just because, like, the thing with her mom, like, her mom's always sitting down, which isn't weird because in most games like this, the characters don't move around a bunch. You know, if the character's sitting or standing in one place, that's what they do.
Right.
But when you get to the end and you start doing the side quests and you do hers, you find out you go back in time and you find out there was an accident where she like got caught on one of her husband's machines, Luca's dad's machines, and like her legs were like destroyed or crushed.
She was wearing a dress or some shit.
Yeah,
right?
she got pulled onto the conveyor belt. So you have the chance to save her.
1860s like loom worker style.
Yeah, and it's another good example of the choice stuff, and it's probably the choice that has like the biggest effect on a character because it if you save her, then in the future she's not crippled. And it actually changes Luca's backstory of why she even wanted to become so invested in science, because originally, if it doesn't change, it's because she like feels so bad that she wasn't able to save her mom, and she was just a little kid, so really it couldn't have been expected of her to, but
Right.
she's so like upset, like she never wants that to happen to anybody else, so she wants to create machines and make safer shit and all that kinds of stuff, and be able to fix anything and stop any accident like that from ever happening. But if it goes...
She's like OSHA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if her mom gets saved, well, then she's like, well, that was fucking close. I better make sure that doesn't happen again. You know? So they're similar, but it is a change, and it does change her character. And the mom standing up to you. But in terms of a choice, you have like one shot to do it right, unless you load your save. But
That's cheating, bro.
like...
Save states are cheating.
I mean, well, if you even you can save before and then load the save. If you fuck it up.
Still a save state, bro. Save state.
But
Cheating.
it like you basically have besides that you have one chance to put in the right password or whatever to turn off the machine, and if you fuck it up, it's fucked up.
Right.
So, but besides that, you know, she's fun. I like her. She's around the whole game. Childhood friend shit. Oh, another thing that I like with the characters is if you can take them back to Chrono's mom, and she'll have a little comment on them.
Right.
Which is fun.
Yeah.
That's one of those little touches that, if it was gone, would it be that big of a deal? No. But there's probably hundreds of those in the game. Little touches. And that's what take it to the next level. So,
right.
Next character you get is, well, I guess Frog technically, but he doesn't permanently join the party.
Right.
So Frog, I really don't think we have anything to say about Frog, do we?
I have a lot to say about Frog.
Frog is my favorite character.
Frog is the best character in this whole game.
So, again, sort of an archetype, like the Fallen Knight. But then you take the Princess and the Frog type of thing, where a character turns into a frog.
Yeah.
But this time it's the Knight. And what's nice is he's really, like, just the most fleshed out character. Probably him and Magus. Or Magus. Let's decide how to pronounce it. How do you want to pronounce that? Do you like Magus?
Magus.
I like Magus too. I like it, the sound of it. So, but yeah, the nice part about Frog is just he's useful in gameplay. He's like a good all rounder, but he's just like the Depresso Knight. Sort of like he's like, oh no, I failed. I'm a piece of shit. I'm worthless.
The one thing I wish Frog would do, right?
Yeah.
Is use his tongue to wield his sword.
At least he does use the tongue, though.
Yeah.
He uses the tongue all the time, but he doesn't use it to wield the sword, unfortunately.
That'd be hype, bro. Frog's a fucking hype beast.
I know, like he cuts the mountain in half.
Yeah.
And he has, from the minute and he just really like stands apart because...
He's a fucking frog?
Well, yes.
I mean,
But as a character, he has a very strong motivation from the first time you meet him. The first time you meet him, it's wanting to save the queen.
Right.
But, like, a lot of the characters are along for the ride. And then, of course, they want to save the world by stopping Lavos, eventually.
Yeah.
But even that's, like, they don't know how exactly they're going to do it. They're just kind of trying to figure it out. But Frog is like, I want to get revenge on Magus. And you don't exactly know why until later on. But when you get the flashback, which is one of my favorite parts of the game, where you see Cyrus, like, who was the hero, you know?
Yeah.
Cyrus was the hero, and Frog was kind of like, or Glenn, was kind of like
He's a squire.
He was a squire, and Cyrus always said that he was a better swordsman than he would be a better swordsman. But he didn't like fighting. He didn't like violence, you know?
Right.
He was like noble. He wanted to, help protect the kingdom and help Cyrus, but he never had the stomach for battle.
Right.
And of course, when Cyrus gets killed by Magus and Magus turns Glenn into a frog, it's like...
Glenn is punished snake, bro.
I know, bro.
He's Venom Snake,
Except he's a good character.
Yeah.
And from there, he continues to be, like, a fun, engaging character the whole way. He's got a lot of...
He talks in Old English. It's hype. He's a hype beast, bro.
He has a lot, like his side quest later on when he's gotten his revenge, and at this point, we haven't got to Magus yet, but Magus can join the party. He doesn't have to, but he can.
Right.
Why
doesn't he turn Frog back when he joins the party?
I don't know.
I think that's a plot hole. I think that'd be like the first thing like I would ask.
Does it ever come up that Frog doesn't want it?
Can you like turn me back into a person?
I don't know. I wouldn't call it a plot hole. It is a bit weird.
Right.
It'd be like a plot hole if Frog was like, "Can you turn me back into a human?" And Magus was like, "I cannot." I think that would.
Was it this Magus that turned you into a frog? It was a different Magus. We got like 16 of us.
That would be a bit of a plot hole.
Right.
But, so, that's why one reason I like Magus joining the party is because they have a little bit of dialogue, and it's sort of like Glenn's able to, like, forgive him, you know?
Right.
Or at least work with him.
Right.
And Glenn's side quest is, like, clearing out the I forget what it is. It's like a mansion or a barracks or something.
Yeah.
And he talks to Cyrus's ghost, and just the whole scene is one of my favorite scenes in the game.
Yeah.
It's good shit. I like it a lot. So, favorite character, probably. He's a hype beast. I keep him around usually all the time.
Yeah.
Anything else you feel you want to say on Glenn/Frog?
Nah.
Good thing we're not talking about Chrono. Good thing we're not talking about Chrono Cross, because there's a character named Glenn in that game.
Oh. Right.
So, Robo. The next character you get.
He looks like Winnie the Pooh.
I'm glad you're the one that has the eye on the vague aesthetic connections.
Really?
It makes me happy. Because I don't think that. You know, I noticed that Marla has genie pants, but it doesn't occur to me to say it.
Oh.
Or,
I just keep it real, dog. I just keep it real.
I see it, I say it. I'm a simple kind of man. As the famous Mr. Leonard Skinner once said.
Leonard Skinner?
Leonard Skinner. Oh, what a tragedy when Leonard Skinner died in that plane accident.
Oh, no. We need to go back and fix this timeline, bro.
So, Robo, I like. Gameplay-wise, he's pretty neat. I like his design. My favorite scene with him is probably just right at the beginning when you get him and you go to the factory. And like all of his robot brothers like call him a failure and shit.
And they beat him up.
It's immediately makes him...
they gang beat him, bro.
I know. And it immediately makes him sympathetic. So...
He like blood in, blood out, motherfucker.
His side quest at the end, where like you find out he's like Prometheus, and he like there's the female version, and they fight the Mother Brain or whatever. I think her name is Mother Brain.
Oh no.
Why is everything called Mother Brain and everything?
I don't know, because like, you know, one of the closest people you're supposed to be with is with your mom.
Yeah.
And it's like the head of like everything, so it's like the brain, so it's like
Mother Brain.
Mother Brain.
They're trying to... It's like an immediately... It's one of the most basic human concepts.
It's Freudian.
And you attach it to an obtuse sci-fi concept, and it immediately makes more sense just by the name of it. So, I like that. Doesn't really, like... add too much to his character, I don't think, but it's neat. And then I also like the side quest with the farmer lady, if you recall, where like she wants to in the present, I think it's the present. There's a grave of a lady. It's like she tried to
plant 1,000 trees.
She tried to plant 1,000 trees and she wasn't able to. But then you go and you fight the guy in the desert, the skeleton in the desert or whatever, and then they're like, well, you know, it's going to take a lot of work to plant these 1,000 trees, and it's probably going to take a couple hundred years to do it. And right. Robo's like, all right, I'll do it. So then you leave him there, and then if you go to the present, you can go pick him up. And he's like, damn, I'm fucking 400 years old. Which is just not... It doesn't really change anything about his character in the game.
Right.
But it's nice to, like, think about, like, I wonder how all that time alone affected him. Because, he mentions it sucked, kind of. Like he doesn't regret doing it, but it did kind of suck to be alone for all that time after they died. But he did his duty, bro. He did his robo duty.
Robo duty.
So I like him. Good character. And we have Ayla.
The wife, bro.
Yeah.
The wife.
Yeah, I mean, how do they make a 16-bit sprite so goddamn hot?
I don't know.
Gameplay-wise, she's another one of my favorites just because I love, like, physical characters and, like, monk characters.
Yeah.
So, she's the physically strongest character in the game, so just based on that, I like to have her around. And the other thing I like is just... First of all, it's like a ancient tribe, 65 million BC. It's like a Neanderthal tribe or whatever almost. But she's the leader even though she's female because it's all based on strength, which is more advanced in terms of equality between men and women than like 1000, AD is or whatever.
Right.
So, which is a nice touch.
Kind of side note to this like time period, but does Toriyama draw like the best dinosaurs?
He does.
He does.
He draws the best monsters.
They look chunky.
They do.
They look cute. That's what it is. They look cute.
They're cute and chunky.
And I want to pet it.
And real dinosaurs weren't, they were
chunky
like...
or cute.
They were like weird, skinny bird fucking feathery fucking weirdos.
Right.
Covered in blood and shit.
Covered in blood and shit.
Yes. Exactly. So... I like the human reptile rivalry. I don't mind if I do.
Huh?
No, don't worry about it. I like the human reptile rivalry between the humans and the reptile people, and the leader of the reptites is a female as well, which makes a good contrast to Ayla. It's also implied that she's pregnant a couple times, which is weird, but it's still cool, I guess, because she's like a badass prehistoric village chief, bad bitch, reptite killing mom. She's cool,
milf, bro.
She's cool, good character.
Mom might like to fight.
It's implied that she's bi and that she's pregnant, so she's like the most progressive character in any JRPG to date.
So she's a Borderlands character.
Yeah.
Okay. Just double checking.
I mean, 65 million BC is basically the Borderlands.
I suppose. Yeah. I mean, they're probably incestuous, so yeah, it's pretty much Pandora.
She really doesn't have a side quest actually at the end. She does she has a big focus of like her character is a big part of the quest in 65 million BC, so she doesn't feel like she's underdeveloped. But I think they had said that they ran out of time to kind of give her a fully fleshed out side quest at the end, which is unfortunate.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's everybody except Magus. So Magus is my second favorite character. And it's close. First of all, he's badass.
Bro, hold on.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you call him Janus?
Yeah, Janus. If we call Frog Glenn, we gotta call Magus Janus. So, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
The way his character is developed and fleshed out is really good, just because it involves the time travel and you find out about everything backwards. Like you find out about his the bad shit that he's done, obviously because of Frog. That's the side you see first, but eventually you see him as a child and you see, what happened to him, and then you realize that he was never trying to destroy the world; he was trying to kill Lavos.
Right. He's got better villain development than Big Boss, bro.
He does.
Yeah.
He's just a great character all around. It's
Pretty
fun.
much, yeah.
He's got a lot of unique, cool magics. He's got a fun boss fight when you fight him the first time in his lair or whatever. Plus,
he has a scythe. I like that he has a scythe. I like characters with scythes.
Scythes are quite Kino, top tier, top of the line, top shelf, opposite of bottom of the barrel.
The top of the barrel? The cream of the crop.
Cream of the crop. The finest wine.
Yeah.
Those are scythe characters.
The Amontillado of weapons, if you will.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's good shit.
Yeah.
I won't go super into detail about just all of the all of the little steps that make his character, but just the fact that he was like, really, he was after the same thing that the main characters are after makes him sympathetic. And I like that he's an optional party member too. Because to me, he's not optional. Because I fucking love his character so much. But it is nice if you don't want to have the villain, because he did do bad shit, that you don't have to have him.
Right.
You kind of have to go out of your way. Speaking of, the whole quest to get him involves Chrono fucking dying, which somehow we glossed over, but it's probably fitting to talk about it towards the end. What fucking game does that?
Persona 3.
Yeah, but you can't keep playing Persona 3 after he dies. I mean, there's the answer.
Yeah.
But that wasn't like an expansion later on. And you can't save him.
Right.
Because you can beat the game without saving. You don't have to, if you say fuck Chrono.
Fuck Chrono.
Fuck Chrono. I hate that son of a bitch.
Right.
Goku
looking motherfucker.
He dies in a heroic sacrifice, which adds to his character a little bit, even though he doesn't have a lot of character. He's a heroic guy. That's kind of his main defining character trait. He's a noble person.
Right.
And the way you save him is like... It's neat. It involves the time travel.
Yeah.
Switching the body for a double. So
bro, you save Chrono with a real life, like a real doll, sex doll.
So, speaking of... I don't know when I want to get into this. I just want to mention, kind of as a character roundup, a lot of the side characters are really good, and we haven't talked about Lavos yet, and I want to talk about Lavos kind of separately, but I like the three wise men or whatever that got scattered throughout time.
Yeah.
And it fits into the story because in game, the reason you can only have 3 characters at a time is because only 3 can go through the gate or whatever, only 3 can fit in the ship.
Right.
So, the 4 characters who went in the time gate are the 3 wise men and then Janus. So they all got sent to different time periods. Which is a nice... It's never called out, but I think it's intentional.
And one gets sent to the end of time.
Yeah, well, because he's the
4th.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gaspar. I like him.
Yeah.
I like that he never, brags about it. They just ask him, are you Gaspar? He's like, haven't heard that name in a long time.
That's an old man trope right there.
I know, bro.
He's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I know. So, I like all those guys. Queen Zeal's a fine villain. She's just not very fleshed out. She's like, I'm evil. I want to use Lavos to take over the world. Brr. I do like how...
Okay, we have to mention what we named our ship.
What did we name it?
The Brat.
Oh, that we did.
Yeah, we did.
Which is the best name for a ship. The Brap. Roll the R. Brr.
Yeah.
I don't have too much to say about the individual time periods, except that they're all fleshed out. They all have their own vibe. They're all interesting. They're all unique. There's not a ton of them, so it gets confusing or anything like that.
Yeah.
My favorite... What I like the most is, the way the game goes is, it's 1000 AD, and it's obviously more advanced than it was in 1000 AD, but it kind of mimics, a steampunky sort of medieval fantasy kind of world. And then as you go back in time, the technology is appropriately, less advanced as you go, except you go to 10,000 BC last, and there's, it's like an ice age, but they also have, magic technology, and they're kind of more advanced than the modern people are.
Right.
But then you find out it's because they've been sucking power off of Lavos, and he's pissed. As pissed as something like Lavos can be, anyway. And it just makes that time period interesting because it's presented last. So, and that's the nice part about time travel shit, or just shit that's not in chronological order, is you can present things in a more interesting way than it would be if it just showed you 65 million BC, then 12,000, then 600, then 1,000, then all that shit. So, or just you see the day of Lavos way at the beginning of the game. You see the end of the world, so you know what you're fighting against. It's not a vague threat.
Right.
You see the world before, you see the world after, and you see Lavos destroy the world. So, thanks to the time travel, it's not oh no, we can't let Lavos, if they found out about Lavos some other way and they knew he was going to destroy the world, it's like, oh no, we can't let it happen. It's like, you see the world before, you see the world after, so you know what you're fighting to change.
Right.
Which is I think, like Final Fantasy VI does something similar. Dragon Quest XI does something similar. One of the best examples is Ocarina of Time, where you play as a kid and then you go forward 7 years and you see how the world's destroyed, so you know in game. They don't have to show you a cutscene. You can just see it in game. What? Yeah,
I like how it's show don't tell.
Exactly.
That's always the best way to do it in a game.
Yep.
Because I'm not reading a fucking book here.
Or watching a movie, which we could go on about probably, but a lot of people want games to be more movie-like when really they should be more game-like.
Right.
There's a balance, of course, but the most interesting way to show something isn't necessarily in a cutscene. That's all. So
correct.
If we ever do The Last of Us, then that's where I would get into that discussion, because I have a couple. That's kind of a game that is super highly praised, but a lot of people hate it because they feel like it's a super example of that kind of mindset. So if
don't show. Or show don't
are
show.
just it's like a cinematic experience type of game in a lot of ways.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It's like a Quantum Dream game.
Kind of not to that extent.
Yeah. Those are just playable movies, bro.
Those are even worse, yeah.
QTE, the game.
Or Uncharted.
Oh.
Also by Naughty Dog, is the same kind of, it's like playing an Indiana Jones movie. But there's not necessarily anything about it being a game that makes it, But that's
right.
that's a whole other discussion. But it's nice that how it's done in Chrono Trigger. Let's just leave it at that. And what I like about the time travel in Chrono Trigger, and I'm a fan of time travel stuff. If good time travel is one of my biggest nutbusters.
Bad time travel is really bad, though.
It's annoying. It is annoying. I like Star Trek. I don't want to call Star Trek out, but Star Trek a lot of the time has really lazy time travel, just where it doesn't really make sense. It's just, or Doctor Who. I like Doctor Who too, but Doctor Who time travel is literally just the way to put the characters in the setting.
Right.
It's never used. Rarely, because I think it is a couple times used sort of in an interesting way, but usually it's just an excuse to get them in the Middle Ages or get them in the 1960s, or you know what I mean.
Right. Right.
But in Chrono Trigger, usually there's two basic kinds of time travel, and one of them is you change shit, and the second is you always time traveled and you didn't change anything because it was always how it is.
Right.
You know what I mean? Put it simply. Some people find that really confusing. I think I get it. It's never bothered me very much. But I think Chrono Trigger has both types, which is interesting because at the beginning, when they're using the gates, it's everything they do has always happened. Magus always exists. And so they fight Magus, and he always has went back to 12,000 BC and caused his self, because Magus is the cause of his child self being sent to the Middle Ages. So all that shit always happened. All the time traveling you did through gates always happened, but when you unlock the ship, that's when you unlock the side quest part of the game, which is a JRPG trope of the first half is linear, and then when you get an airship, you have a lot of freedom, and that's when you can kind of do side quests or go fight the final boss. So they kind of use that trope very smartly, because now you're able to change history. So that's when you're able to plant the trees, and that's when you're able to save Luca's mom, and that's when you're able to stop Chrono from dying.
Right.
So it's nice that they have both kinds of time travel in there, and the gameplay is what causes the gameplay and the kind of time travel are tied together, which is obviously something you can only do in a game, because if it was a book and it had both kinds, it'd probably be inconsistent.
Right.
You say this has inconsistent time travel, which is you didn't think it through all the way. But in Chrono Trigger, there's a reason, and it reflects the gameplay.
Right.
Which is and you can tell they thought it through.
Right.
They could put They put the time and the thought and the polish into it, and it shows. So, all right. So the kind of my last topic is Lavos. So,
Lavos as a concept is cool.
Lavos is based. I love Lavos because it's one of the best Eldritch villains in any game.
Right.
Because you never find out that much about it, which is important for Eldritch stuff. And it's unknowable, and it is massively more powerful than anything else. It when it arrived on Earth, not only caused an apocalypse, but it dictated the course of all evolution on the planet.
It's like the Reapers.
For 65 million years. Yeah, it's like the Reapers, but better.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. What pushes it over the line is people become aware of it, and they're actively like fighting against it. Like it'd be one thing if nobody knew about it, and it just came out, and destroyed the world. But it's like,
didn't it give people magic?
Yeah, like the people of Zeal found out about it. They harvested its energy. That's how magic came into being. Or Magus finds out about it, and he fucking hates it because it ruined his life and killed his sister. So he vows revenge and all this other shit. So it has a massive effect on the setting. It's unknowable, and it's fucking bizarre how it's basically just, it's not evil necessarily. It's just like prolonging its life because that's how it procreates.
The space rock parasite.
Yeah, it sucks the energy out of a planet and shoots its spawn out into space. Right. So it's appropriately alien and weird and gross, and you can call it evil if you want, but I really don't think it's necessarily malicious. And the boss,
Would you call a tapeworm evil?
No.
No.
You might want to destroy it, but you wouldn't call it evil.
No.
And when you get inside of it to fight the final boss, it's also kind of a JRPG trope that the final boss is weird and trippy.
Yeah.
For no reason.
Yeah.
Which is usually not that big a deal, but in Chrono Trigger, there's a reason. You get inside of this fucking Eldritch monster, and it shows you all these images of bosses you fought and shit in the past.
Yeah.
Because it can see all of it, because it pretty much knows what's going on all over the place. And at the very core of it, it looks like a human, because it has reflected, it's a reflection of the species that it's been intertangled with for 65 million years. And it's weird and trippy, and it's trying to confuse the characters and make them lose their mind and shit.
Right.
But it doesn't work. And you destroy it. So maybe for some people, maybe that's not eldritch enough if you can definitively destroy it. But I think for a JRPG it works, and it's also a JRPG trope to kill God.
Yeah.
Lavos isn't a god, but
he's a godlike being, essentially.
Yeah, he's pretty much. I'm trying to put a stamp on it, but it's it's a godlike being that logically makes sense.
Right.
Because God as a concept doesn't necessarily logically make sense. It's beyond logic. But even though Lavos is beyond human comprehension in some ways, it's still as a existence logically makes sense. So it is maybe the next thing to a god, but it's not quite that level. And eventually humanity is able to fucking boot it out. So
uninstall Lavos.
Yeah, uninstall Lavos. And the nice part is with the time travel, depending on the time period, it changes the ending depending on when you kill it.
Right.
So it's good shit.
What's the best ending?
The pretty much the one we got, where you take the ship and you fly it to Lavos and you fight us outside, and then you go through his layers and fight him. But
it's like an onion.
Yeah, but you do everybody's side quest, and you get Magus and you save Chrono.
Okay. That's
pretty much the best ending.
Okay.
Because you can not get Magus and leave Chrono dead, and that'll give you an ending. And you can fly the ship into Lavos' outer shell, but then you skip some phases of his boss fight. Which maybe that's what you want to do. You have the option. But I like to fight all the phases because it feels more climactic. And then obviously there's some of the endings are like joke endings. Like if you start a new game and immediately like run to the wrong teleporter and fight Lavos. Like you go to like a room with like the developers.
Yeah.
Like, you did it, nice job, buddy. You know.
It's like Nier. A little bit with like joke endings.
Yeah.
Right?
So, it's good shit.
Yeah.
Good game.
Yeah.
Like I said, probably in my top 10-ish, like, JRPGs.
Reasonable.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think it's, like, close to perfect in a lot of things, but just, you know, it doesn't have my favorite story, it doesn't have my favorite characters, it doesn't have my favorite gameplay, but everything is done so immaculately that it's hard to, like, not have it somewhere in the upper echelon of JRPGs because it's so fun to play and experience. And
Right.
I think I first played it like maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and I'm sure I'll play it every couple of years or so, probably until, who knows, until it's impossible to find or something. So good shit.
Yeah.
Anything? Any closing thoughts besides
Not really, other than
Frog's the lad?
yeah. It's also starting to rain in this mask.
All right. Frogs are moist fellas, aren't they?
Yeah. I'm an amphibithought.
All right, next time.
Bro, I look like Hotline Miami. Do you like to hurt other people?
That I do. That I do.
Put some Carpenter Brit under on this video, bro. We're making Hotline Miami now.
Yeah, at least you can reuse that mask.
Shit.
I'll wear the chicken mask.
Oh, God.
We'll just have baseball bats. We'll just fist fight. That'll be the video.
What?
We'll just fist fight to the death. That'll be the video.